You walk into the store for a few basics: milk, bread, chicken, produce, coffee. In your head, it still feels like a $40 or $50 trip. Nothing special, nothing excessive. Then you get to the checkout, the screen climbs toward 90, maybe 100, and the cart does not even look full. That moment is becoming strangely common. And what makes it worse is not just the total. It is the feeling that comes with it: confusion, mental fatigue, a little guilt. That quiet question in the car afterward: how did that happen again? A lot of responsible people blame themselves. They think they stopped paying attention. They think they got careless. But for many shoppers, especially people old enough to remember when grocery shopping felt straightforward, the problem is not a lack of discipline. The environment changed. The modern grocery store is no longer just a place that supplies food. It has become a system of pricing signals, psychological cues, app-based discounts, package tricks, and constant low-level pressure, all designed to pull more from your wallet while making the whole experience feel like your fault. That is why the same trip now feels heavier. Half-full carts with huge totals. Loyalty card prompts at every turn. Sale signs that do not feel like sales. Digital coupons that require homework. Products move to different aisles for no clear reason. Packages shrinking while prices hold steady. Buy 3 offers that make buying one feel irrational. Personalized app discounts that reward the people willing to hand over time, data, and attention. And somewhere inside all of that, grocery shopping stopped feeling routine and started feeling like work. Once you see the pattern, a lot of that frustration starts to make sense. And when it makes sense, you can move through it with more control. The first pattern is easy to miss because it feels so normal. The store is designed to slowly disarm you. Most people think they are making independent choices from aisle to aisle. In reality, the entire environment is built to shape pace, exposure, and attention. The lighting is bright but soft enough to keep products looking appealing. The music is chosen to make the space feel calm, so you stay in it longer. Essentials are often placed far apart, which means the shopper who came in for eggs and coffee ends up passing bakery displays, seasonal snacks, prepared meals, and a dozen other chances to spend. That is not an accident. It is layout strategy. End cap displays are not there because those items happen to fit. They are there because visibility changes behavior. Checkout lanes are lined with last-minute temptations because mental resistance is lowest right before payment. Even product movement plays a role. When familiar items are relocated, you have to search. And while searching, you see more. Older stores often felt more functional. You knew where things were. You got what you needed. You left. Now the path is less direct because a direct path limits exposure. The longer you remain inside the system, the more chances the system has to influence the total. That is why the grocery store no longer feels like a supply stop. It feels like a spending environment. The control shift here is simple but powerful. If the store benefits when you wander, then clarity protects you. A short list organized by section. A rough total in mind before you walk in. A willingness to skip the center displays unless something was already planned. Small habits like that do not remove the pressure completely, but they stop the environment from setting the pace for you. And once that pressure starts shaping movement, the next layer appears at the shelf itself. Loyalty apps changed everything. There was a time when a sale was just a sale. The lower price was on the shelf, and if you walked into the store, you got it. Now many discounts are conditional. App-only pricing. Digital coupons. Member pricing. Scan this code. Clip that coupon. Sign in before checkout. Download the update. Approve notifications. Build your cart online first. For stores, this is efficient. For shoppers, it quietly changed the rules. A person who shops normally without using the app can end up paying noticeably more on the exact same trip. Not because they chose premium products, not because they ignored obvious bargains, simply because they did not participate in the digital layer wrapped around the store. And that creates a new kind of frustration, especially for older shoppers. It feels less like being rewarded for loyalty and more like being punished for wanting a normal shopping experience. The deeper reason is data. These apps do not just deliver discounts. They track habits. What you buy, how often, what time you shop, which brands you switch from, which offers make you respond. Over time, stores can predict behavior more accurately and shape promotions around it. That is why convenience quietly became expensive. The easy path, walking in and buying what you need, now often costs more than the path that requires attention, setup, and digital compliance. The control shift is not that everyone suddenly needs to become an app expert. It is to recognize what the store is doing. If a store makes too much of the value conditional, that is useful information. It may mean choosing one or two stores you understand well instead of chasing every promotion everywhere. It may mean checking digital deals once before leaving home, rather than standing in the aisle doing unpaid administrative work. Control comes from deciding how much of that game you are willing to play. And once discounts become conditional, the store gains another advantage. It can start pushing bigger purchases under the label of value. That is where the family pack trap shows up. On paper, bulk buying looks responsible. Buy two, get one free. Larger size, lower unit price. Family pack chicken, warehouse-size snacks, oversized salad tubs, big bottles of sauce. The message is always the same. Buying more means being smarter. And sometimes it does. But only if the food gets used. That is the part stores never have to worry about. A family pack that spoils before the second meal was not a good value. A giant container of spring mix that turns wet and brown in the fridge was not efficient. The freezer packed with discount meat, bread, and frozen deals can start to feel like protection. But once it becomes a graveyard of forgotten food, the lower price on the label stops meaning much. This is especially easy to fall into when prices feel unstable. If shoppers believe everything will cost more next week, buying extra starts to feel safer than buying enough. That emotional logic is understandable. The problem is that stores profit from the larger checkout total either way. Whether the extra food gets eaten, forgotten, or thrown out later does not change the sale. So the trap is not bulk itself. The trap is buying quantity to relieve anxiety. The control shift is to treat flexibility as part of value. A smaller amount you will actually use can protect more money than a larger amount that creates waste. Foods with longer shelf life, multi-use ingredients, and realistic portion planning often do more for household control than impressive unit price math. In other words, buying more only works when your household can actually absorb more. And that becomes even harder when the signs meant to guide you stop being trustworthy. Fake discounts are now everywhere. This is one of the biggest reasons grocery shopping feels mentally slippery. The shelf is full of yellow tags, red tags, loyalty prices, limited time prices, multi-buy prices, and digital-only offers. It looks like value is everywhere. But when you slow down, a lot of it starts to feel suspicious. A product marked down to $7.99 may have been $7.99 a few months ago without the sale tag. A regular price can quietly rise, so the advertised discount looks dramatic, while the actual benefit is small. Some multi-buy offers make shoppers assume they need 3 to get the lower price, even when the unit price barely changes. Other times, the savings come out to just a few cents, but the label is designed to trigger urgency anyway. This constant manipulation damages something important: price memory. People used to know roughly what things cost. Maybe not to the penny, but enough to feel stable. Now that reference point keeps shifting. Was coffee always this high? Did that cereal used to be bigger? Is this meat actually on sale, or is this just the new normal wearing a bright sticker? When price memory breaks down, resistance weakens. Comparison gets harder. Fatigue sets in. And mentally tired shoppers become easier to move. That is the real cost of pricing confusion. It is not just a few extra dollars. It is the gradual erosion of confidence. The control shift is to anchor yourself to a few repeat items. Not everything in the store, just the products you buy often. Coffee, eggs, bread, chicken, yogurt, detergent. Knowing the normal range of a small core list restores orientation. And once you can spot a real deal versus a decorative one, the shelf becomes less persuasive, because even when the price looks familiar, another shift may already be happening inside the package. The portions keep shrinking. This is where people often feel the strain without being able to explain it. The cart looks similar. The brands are familiar. The packages look almost the same at a glance. But the food disappears faster. Cereal boxes get a little narrower. Bread slices feel thinner. Frozen meals look full on the front but lighter in the hand. Meat trays hold less. Snack bags carry more air and fewer servings. Even restaurant portions in many places no longer deliver the same sense of being fed. That matters because households do not experience groceries as abstract percentages. They experience them as satisfaction, fullness, and how many meals make it to the table before the next trip becomes necessary. Shrinkflation works so well because it hides inside familiarity. A shopper sees the same logo, the same color, the same shelf position, and assumes the same value. But once the quantity drops, the cost per meal rises, and the product needs replacing sooner. That creates a specific kind of stress, not dramatic panic. Just a constant low-level feeling that food runs out too quickly now. The groceries disappear faster than they used to. The control shift here is to look beyond package size and ask a more useful question. How many meals, lunches, snacks, or servings does this actually create in my house? When you think in household usage instead of package appearance, shrinkflation becomes easier to detect. And once you detect it, you can start favoring products that still deliver staying power instead of visual familiarity. By this point, the issue is no longer just individual products. It starts affecting the entire emotional structure of a household. The middle class is losing its buffer. For a long time, middle-class grocery shopping carried some breathing room. You noticed prices, but an ordinary food trip did not feel like a financial event. There was enough margin for a few extras, a spontaneous treat, a convenience item, maybe dinner out later in the week without much internal debate. That margin is thinner now. Many households with decent incomes are watching totals in real time. They are mentally subtracting items before checkout. They are putting groceries on credit cards, not because they are irresponsible, but because monthly cash flow no longer stretches the way it used to. Extras get cut first, then convenience, then variety, then even normal preferences start to feel negotiable. This is not best understood as poverty. It is the erosion of stability. That distinction matters. The issue is no longer luxury. The issue is whether normal life still feels affordable. When a regular family has to think this hard in a bright, fully stocked supermarket, something deeper has changed than just one bad price cycle. And that pressure affects behavior in subtle ways. People become less spontaneous. They second-guess every non-essential item. Dining out happens less. Brand loyalty weakens. Meal planning becomes less about preference and more about risk control. Here is the control shift. When financial breathing room shrinks, clarity matters more than optimism. A realistic core list of staple foods, a smaller group of repeat meals, and a clearer sense of what counts as an extra versus what counts as daily fuel can reduce the damage of decision pressure. Not because anyone wants life to become narrower, but because structure protects stability when the buffer is under attack. And if you have noticed yourself leaving the store more tired than expected, that has a reason too. Why does shopping now feel so exhausting? About halfway through a grocery trip, many people hit a wall they do not name. The lights are still bright. The shelves are still full. But attention starts slipping. Every aisle asks for another judgment. Is this really cheaper? Is the larger one worth it? Does the coupon apply? Is there a store brand version? Did this package get smaller? Is that member price real? Should you buy extra now in case next week is worse? That is decision fatigue, and it is one of the least discussed parts of modern shopping. Grocery trips used to be more automatic. You recognize the store. You recognize the products. You followed habit. Now shopping demands constant calculation, unit price math, promo decoding, digital coupon checking, ingredient comparisons, package size comparisons, price unpredictability, product movement. People are not weak. The system simply became cognitively heavier. So if grocery shopping leaves you unusually drained, here is a useful question. Are you bad at shopping now? Or are you being asked to do far more invisible work than shoppers used to do? That question matters because once people stop blaming themselves, they start seeing the pattern. The same pressure shows up in the layout, the pricing, the app, the package, and the checkout. It is not random. It is a system that transfers more labor to the shopper while preserving the appearance of normal retail convenience. And that recognition can be grounding. If you have felt worn down by a routine grocery trip, you are not failing. You are noticing the weight of a more demanding environment. The control shift is to reduce live decision-making whenever possible. Repeating a few dependable stores, a few dependable staples, and a few dependable price references lowers the cognitive load. The less you have to solve in real time, the less the store can wear you down into surrender. And that fatigue has consequences beyond stress. It changes what people buy. One of the quietest shifts in modern grocery shopping is the move toward cheaper food with longer shelf life. Not necessarily because households stopped caring about quality, often the opposite. They are trying to reduce waste, stretch time, and avoid expensive mistakes. So naturally, shelf-stable and ultra-processed foods gain ground. They last longer. They create less spoilage risk. They survive busy schedules. They feel safer in a system where fresh food can become waste very quickly. That is why cheap filler ingredients, heavily processed snacks, reformulated store brands, and calorie-dense convenience foods have such an advantage. They are built for stability. They sit longer, they travel better, they often cost less upfront. And in a household under pressure, all of that matters. The troubling part is that the grocery system increasingly rewards survival behavior instead of healthy behavior. The products that are easiest to manage financially are often not the ones that leave people feeling best physically. Again, this is not about blaming households for choosing differently. It is about understanding the incentives around them. If fresh produce spoils quickly, if proteins are expensive, if work is tiring, if shopping is mentally draining, and if packaged foods promise certainty, then many people will adapt in exactly the same direction. The control shift is not perfection. It is strategic balance. A few longer-lasting basics with decent nutritional value. Multi-use ingredients instead of niche ingredients. Frozen produce when fresh tends to get wasted. Foods that hold up, satisfy, and fit real life. Control grows when the household stops chasing idealized shopping and starts building around what actually gets used. And once that happens, the meaning of grocery stress becomes bigger than money alone. Because this affects daily life in ways that are easy to underestimate. When feeding yourself starts feeling emotionally complicated, something larger has changed. Meal planning starts carrying tension. Checkout becomes a moment of low-grade dread. Family members can feel the stress even if nobody says much. A request for a favorite snack can sound bigger than it should. A dinner decision can turn into a quiet financial calculation. The old feeling of abundance, not luxury, just ordinary ease, starts to fade. That emotional shift matters because food is not just another household expense. It is daily life. It is routine, comfort, health, family rhythm, and the sense that basic needs can be handled without strain. When that foundation becomes mentally noisy, the whole week can feel less stable. And this is where many people start doubting themselves most. They wonder why something as ordinary as grocery shopping now leaves them tense, irritable, or discouraged. But that reaction makes sense in an environment built around constant small pressures. Price pressure, choice pressure, time pressure, attention pressure. The control shift is not to pretend those pressures are minor. It is to name them accurately. Once you do, the experience changes. You stop interpreting grocery stress as a personal weakness and start treating it as a signal that the environment demands more protection than it used to. That is the larger pattern running through all of this. Modern grocery stores still look bright, full, and normal. The carts still roll the same way. The shelves still look abundant. The signs still promise value. On the surface, it all appears familiar. But beneath that familiar surface, the experience has been transformed. Pricing psychology now does work that straightforward pricing used to do. Behavior engineering shapes movement through the store. Shrinkflation changes value without changing visual identity. Digital systems sort shoppers into different price tiers. Bulk offers increased totals before households know whether the food will actually be used. And cognitive overload weakens resistance one small decision at a time. That is why so many middle-class shoppers leave the store feeling defeated by a trip that should have been simple. They are not imagining the pressure. The environment itself changed. And there is real relief in recognizing that, because understanding the system restores some control. Once you begin spotting fake value signals, unit price traps, bulk manipulation, digital discount pressure, and package shrinkage, the store becomes easier to read. Not perfect, not harmless, but easier to read. You move calmer. You compare with more confidence. You stop letting every sale sign set the emotional tone. You make more decisions before the store makes them for you. That does not solve everything happening in the economy, but it does protect something important: your attention, your confidence, your ability to move through a manipulated environment without absorbing all of its pressure. And for many households, that is where stability begins to return. If you want more breakdowns like this, more consumer awareness, more clarity about what is happening inside everyday systems, and more ways to stay steady under financial pressure, subscribe and stay with us. Because the more clearly you see the pattern, the harder it becomes for that pattern to quietly work against you.